Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our Grow a Little Extra Gardening and Nutrition Lunchtime webinar series. I want to thank the CNP program. I want to thank the Barnyards and Backyards program, and UW Extension for allowing us to host this program. I also want to thank Wyoming's First Lady. We'll talk more about her and the Wyoming Hunger Initiative in a little bit as well, but we are doing this as part of a program to support the Wyoming Hunger Initiative. And what we're trying to do is encourage not just master gardeners, but certainly master gardeners as well as all Wyoming gardeners to grow a little extra in their gardens this year and to donate that produce to local food banks. And by doing this, we're helping to address food insecurity in Wyoming, and your participation as a master gardener is encouraged by allowing you to do a combination of volunteer service as well as food donations to help meet that the volunteer expectation of the Master Gardener program. So just so everyone is on the same page, for Master Gardeners, newly trained Master Gardeners, we ask that you commit to 40 volunteer hours of service, and you can do a combination of volunteer hours and food donation. So for every pound of produce you donate from your own garden, you'll receive credit for 1 volunteer hour. And again, a combination that adds up to 40 will earn you your certificate. And for you active master gardeners, the annual volunteer commitment is 20 volunteer hours once you've fulfilled that original 40. And so, again, we can do a combination of volunteer hours in addition to pounds of produce donated that add up to a total of 20 to meet that commitment. And so we encourage all master gardeners to participate in this program and donate a little produce from your garden to food banks to help serve families in need in our communities in Wyoming. The master gardeners have donated almost 3,000 pounds of food in the last 2 years, 2,895 pounds of produce. And this year is really going to be our first year partnering with the Wyoming Hunger Initiative and the Sensible Nutrition Program to, again, working together to help fight hunger in Wyoming. Today we have a gardening lesson for you. We're going to hear from Jenny Thompson, or you may know Jenny from Barnyards and Backyards, or our small acreage UW Extension program. Thank you, Jenny, for joining us. And she's going to talk about seed starting. And then we're also going to hear from some sensible from Kaylee McCracken-Goodenough from the UW Sensible Nutrition program. She's going to talk a little bit about the Grow a Little Extra program and food insecurity in Wyoming. So we hope you enjoy this series. This will be a 5-part series. Next week we'll get into composting and improving the garden soil. May 2nd we'll talk about raised bed gardening. The next class on May 9th will be promoting pollinators in your garden. And then the last class is really intended for master gardeners and master gardener coordinators with UW Extension, as well as the Sensible Nutrition educators from around the state, to have a session to talk about potential collaborations between master gardeners and the Sensible Nutrition program and some of the gardening efforts that they're doing across the state. So we hope to connect some of our volunteers with some of these gardening projects that are helping to address food insecurity in Wyoming as well. So we'll talk about that more later. So let me just say welcome and thank you for being here. If you do have questions along the way, please do type them in, either if you're joining us via Zoom, in the Q&A box, or if you're joining us on Facebook Live, you can just type your comments and questions directly there, and we will make sure that we take time to answer those questions as well. So with that, I am going to switch gears here and hand things over to our first speaker for the Grow a Little Extra series, and that is Jenny Thompson. Jenny, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here with you today for such a good cause. And we're going to be talking about starting plants from seed indoors. And so to get us started, one of the first things I want to say is that for those of you that haven't done this before, the thing that you should know is it's not that hard. If you give seed the conditions they like, they will grow and produce wonderful plants indoors for you. And if you have been doing it before, you will also know that it's an awful lot of fun, especially in April, where you might live, maybe like where we live, where it's the roller coaster season, the weather's going in and out. And so it's lovely to go down in your basement or wherever and see plants growing. So the first thing I wanted to start talking about was the first thing you need to know is when is your last average frost date? So this is an average. It's going to be different every year, but this is the date that you're most likely to have your last average frost. So as you know, as gardeners, if you garden in Wyoming at all, you know that's pretty much a crapshoot each year. And so you just go for the best, put it out. When you put your plants outside, you cover them up and you are ready and prepared if frost comes. So you want to find out your last average frost date for your area. So we put on the website, and I know that Chris has put a link up to a document that we have up where if you don't know your last average frost date, you can look it up. And another great way to find out is just ask other gardeners in your area. When's your last frost date? Or when do you put your stuff outside? And that'll help you find out. So I'm just going to do an example of this. And this is all going to be fairly basic stuff. If you have questions, please type them in, as Chris said, and we'll try to answer them as best we can. So I'm going to use Laramie as an example. So all of you that live in warmer areas of the state can feel really good about yourself when you see our dates. So for Laramie, I'm going to use a last frost date of June 10th. So the reason I want to know this is that on most seed packets of vegetables that you start inside, it'll say how many weeks do you need to grow it inside before you transplant it outside after the last frost date. And if you don't find it on a packet like this one, we'll see if it's in focus or not, but this is a package of broccoli. It says start indoors 6 weeks before last frost. So that tells me when I need to start it. So if you don't find it on your packet, like with the Grow a Little Extra program, you might have received a sheet like this where it'll actually say on the sheet by the vegetable how many weeks you need to start it indoors. And some of our seed we start indoors, other types we don't in the vegetables. So not many people start beans indoors or carrots. That's usually directly sown outside. But things like broccoli, especially tomatoes, people that love tomatoes, we have such short seasons that it really is helpful to start them indoors and get a jump start on the season. Another reason to start plants from seed indoors is that you have a wider choice in varieties. So you have all the different seed companies out there, and you can find different varieties. Oh, thank you, Chris. It was upside down. So you can find different varieties. And so sometimes it's hard to find ones that are short, that have a short enough growing season to fit our climate. So this gives you a much wider swath of varieties to choose from. But so I always grow some indoors. I've grown literally hundreds and hundreds of plants. I think my neighbors secretly call me the crazy plant lady because I see all my plants sitting out my driveway in the spring. So yeah, I'm probably one of many plant crazy people. So what you want to do, as I said, is you find what you want. So this is broccoli. My last frost date is June 10th. And like I said, that's probably not the actual last frost date, but is what I'm going to go with. And it says it needs 6 weeks indoors. So you just count back 1 week. That's June 10th is what I was looking at. Sorry, may not have been able to read that. 1 week, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'm getting out of May. 6, So the 6 weeks away from June 10th is April 26th, or 29th. Sorry, it's upside down. So I'm going to mark that on my calendar. I don't know about you, but my memory is pretty bad. So I mark it on my calendar so I know when I want to get started. So what I will do is I will take all my seed packets. When they arrive, I'll put them in little piles. And I'll have a 10-week pile. That's usually flowers. You don't have too many vegetables that need 10 weeks. 8 weeks, 6 weeks, 4 weeks. And some of the ones like cucurbits, so like the cucumbers and stuff, they don't need very long at all. So it might be like 2 or 3 weeks before the last frost date. And they're very sensitive to frost too. So I'll find those, I'll put them in piles and get everything ready to go. All right, and move this out of the way. So I'm going to show you one way to start plants indoors. There are about as many ways to start planting indoors as there are gardeners. So you can find a lot of people with different opinions about how to do it, but it's not that hard. So you now know your frost date, you have your seeds in your hand, they're the proper varieties for your climate. Now you need a container to contain whatever the growing medium is that you're going to use. So this can be something more fancy like this. These are little cell packs. They're made out of plastic and you can just buy them. And these are a good size for growing transplants that you're going to put outside. I have even smaller ones that I use for some of my flowers, but I know that when they come up, I'll have to transplant them into a larger container at some point. So you can use recycled goods. A lot of gardeners do. This is a type of container you might get from the grocery store where you get salad or something in it. You can use that. You can use yogurt cups. You can use, I often use some paper cuts for transplanting plants into. The main thing with your container, it has to be clean and it has to have holes in the bottom. That's super important. So plants, the main ways you can kill them are to let them dry out too much. So they dry all the way out, that'll kill them. You can drown them. So if the water does not come out of your container and it stays in there, you will drown your little roots and your little plant will rot off and die. So that's another one. Other ways are temperature. You need a reasonable temperature for your plants to grow and then a reasonable amount of light. But today I'm going to show you in cell packs. Oh, there's another couple other methods which a lot of people use. Jiffy pots, or Jiffy pellets, I should say. Jiffy pots are different. So I'm going to use the cell packs, but another one is the Jiffy pellets. They're little compressed pellets of mainly peat moss, and when you add water, they expand, and they will puff up and make a nice little planting container for you. So they look like that. But today we're going to do this cell packs. So you have your container, it has holes in it. It's sitting in another container to capture the water because I don't want it running all over the place. So I got that ready to go. So the next thing you need to decide is what you're going to put in there as the thing you're going to grow the seeds in. And so what I'm going to use is a seed starting mix. This one is made out of sphagnum, and it has some perlite in it and some other stuff. And it has a little bit of fertilizer in there as well. You don't need to have fertilizer in it. It's entirely up to you. But the main things about your mix is that it should be well draining and it should be fairly sterile. Or if you use anything that you mix yourself, you'll probably want to pasteurize it in the oven. And this can be a stinky process, just so you know. But if you buy it from somewhere else, it's probably already ready to go. And the reason for that is one of the other big killers of seedlings is a disease problem called damping off. Basically, your little seedlings will be all happy in there one day. Next day you'll come and they'll all have fallen over. And that's because the fungus is rotting them off at the soil line. So you don't want that to happen after all your hard work. So you might want to use a seed starting mix that's not going to cause you that issue. You can use other things, but you're just taking more chances. So it depends on how into risk you are. So I have my medium. So you can see I've filled up some of the cells. You basically just take it, So one of the things that's helpful with these seed mixes is they often have a lot of peat, or they'll have coconut coir, I'm probably mispronouncing that, in them, is if you dampen them with water before you use them. If you've ever been around dry peat moss, it's like, it's got a case of static cling or something. It sticks to everything. So you'll dump it out, it'll stick to your face and your glasses and everything. So if you add some, especially some warm water, like the night before, it'll make it a lot easier to work with. Won't be flying everywhere. So I dampen this. Now I just fill up my little cell packs. And so I'm kind of filling it to the top of them. You can see my high-tech equipment of my paper cup as my little shovel. Just use whatever you have on hand. And I'm gonna fill them up to the top. So this stuff is pretty lightweight. It's not packed down yet. So when I add water to it, this stuff will sink. It won't be at the top anymore. It'll sink down a bit, and that's what you want. So what I would do at this point is I would water it. You can do it different ways. You plant your seed dry and then water it up. So you plant your seed in there and then you water from the top, or these little cell packs, you can pull them up and put water in the bottom of the tray. And eventually it'll absorb through your mix. And when it gets dark on the top, you know that it's all watered in, then you pour off any excess. But for this one, I'd probably use a water can. I don't know if you can see it. This is my favorite water can. Well, a lot of gardeners have their favorite equipment. This is mine. It's got a fancy little rose, which they call. So it sprinkles on a really light mist of water. I'm not going to do very much here, otherwise I'll make a huge mess. But as you water it, it'll start to sink down. So you want a little room on the top, because if you're going to be putting seed right on the surface, you want to cover it up a little bit usually. There's some flowers and stuff that actually need a little bit of light in order to germinate, and I'll often say that on the packet if that's an issue, but most seeds you covered up a little bit. And so one thing I forgot to mention, or I was going to mention later, is labeling. This may be a little challenging. So labeling is super, super, super important if you're like me and don't have much memory, so you can remember what it was in the world that I planted. And there's different ways to label. One of them, I didn't plan this out too well, is I use painter's tape on the side of my tray that I am going to use to label this. So this works with cell packs. It won't work for some other things you might use. So this is my strip of painter's tape. And so you can see I have written on there what is in there. So that when it's on the side of my tray, I can just look up and see that that whole row of cell packs is going to be that same variety. So that's one way to do it. And so this comes in useful if you're growing under fluorescent lights. And I'll talk a bit later about the lighting system and tell you why that is. Another way to do it is to do it with tags. So little stakes that you might use. Let's see here. Sorry if I'm making you sick. There we go. It's more in focus. So this is one of my labels. So it is made on, these are actually mini blinds. So those mini blinds that you open and close. So these are old ones that weren't needed anymore. You just pull them apart and cut them into pieces, and you can use them as labels. But you can also buy them from the store. You can use popsicle sticks, whatever you have on hand that'll work. So you can just pop them in. So label, label, label. Once you got everything labeled and you got your mix in there and ready to go, you can start planting. So today I'm going to be planting a little bit of broccoli and a little bit of zucchini. So normally I'd wait a little longer for the zucchini, but since we're doing a demonstration here, I'll go ahead. So this is broccoli seed. They're pretty darn small. There we go. Sorry, I should have practiced a little more. Where to put things. So they're pretty small compared to the zucchini, which are pretty large. So these guys being pretty small, I'm going to put some in my cell packs. So you need to decide next, how many seed do I want to put in there? So usually if your seed is fresh, most of it's going to germinate. If you have older seed, you might want to put more seed in a cell pack, knowing that a few may not come up. So I usually put 1 or 2 seeds in each cell pack. So it's hard to see because I'm a little dark seeds against a dark surface, but I'm putting in the broccoli seed. I'm putting 2 in each cell. And then I'm going to cover it up with meating. Do 1 more. So basically I've got a 50-50 chance. One doesn't sprout, the other will. If you get too many in a cell pack, it's easy to get rid of them. You can just use your fingers and pinch them off if you want. It's one way. And I'm going to get next, if I can find where I put my zucchini seed. I'll get those out. There. Like I said, they're much larger seeds. So basically the rule is with smaller seed, you plant them shallower. For big seeds, you can plant them deeper. And part of the reason for that is they just have more energy. So a seed is basically a little package. It's like taking your lunch to work. They got their lunch in here, and it's going to provide them with the food that they need to push through the soil surface and get up to the sunlight. So for the zucchini, you can plant them a little deeper. So these are easy. And since this is fresh seed, they're going to germinate well. So I'm just going to put 1 per pack. Easy squeezy. No problem. So they're all in there. So especially if you ever bought certain hybrid tomatoes, they are expensive. So you're going to want to put 1 seed per pack because you don't want to have to throw any of them away. You can pull them out and separate them and transplant them if you want, but it's just easier to put them 1 per cell. So next we just cover them up with a little bit more mix. Then after you're done, you're going to give it a drink. So like I said, you can water them from below or from the top. One of the reasons some people sometimes water from below, and it's not so much with the vegetables because they aren't too bad, but there's some flower seeds that are like dust. And so they're worried about knocking them out of the mix with the water droplets from the watering from above. So they'll water them from below. But just do whatever works for you. There you go. So the main things that seeds need, which I mentioned before, is they need a good medium to grow in, which these are in. They need the proper amount of water. So you're going to want to water these guys. What I'll do is I'll water them up, and then I'll put one of these plastic domes on it. This is a one just for a small one, so it doesn't cover it all. But it'll help keep the moisture in. So the goal is that your seed will stay damp long enough for them to germinate. And so I'll put that top on there. If you don't have a top like that, you can use saran wrap. You can stick it inside a bag. So as long as if it's a plant that needs light to germinate, a little light needs to get in there. But other than that, it's just holding in the moisture so that you don't have to water quite so often until they get germinated. So if I get too much water in here, like I said, I'll just dump it out like that, and it'll dribble out the end here, all the excess water. So you want to have it somewhere where it doesn't matter if stuff gets wet. So you water, you put the top on, and then you need to put it in a place with a nice temperature. So most room temperatures for humans work just fine for plants. There's a few plants that like it warmer. So there's some warm season crops like tomatoes that like it a little bit warmer. So you can either put it in a warmer room or you can use a heat mat. So this is a heat mat. It's just a plastic, it kind of reminds you of those heating pads that you use for yourself, but don't use those because they aren't waterproof. This is a waterproof one. You don't want to mix water and electricity. So you can put this underneath and then you put your flat of seeds on top of it. And basically it provides nice heat and it'll really make the tomatoes really jump out. They'll germinate fast with a heat mat. But things like whole crops, broccoli, etc., they don't need that much heat. So I raise most of mine in my basement. It's fairly cool down there. The lights give off some heat, make it warmer. So it's basically just room temperature. The other thing that you're going to need is light. Light is super important to have healthy plants. So you can do the light a number of ways. Some people raise their plants on the windowsill. You can do that. It's a little more iffy. The temperature goes up and down a lot, depending how the window is located. It can be successful or not as much, but lights work super well. I've raised thousands of plants under lights. And so, I don't know if you're on, is it showing both?
Yeah, we can see. Yep.
Great. So this is a very nice light setup that Chris has that is using LED lights. So it's got LED tubes. So I have my setup in my basement. I use fluorescence lights. This does not have to be fancy. It does not have to be expensive. This is a really nice one, but you can do it really simply. So what I have is some shop lights. So if you get shop lights that have like 4 bulbs in them, you can hang them on a chain system. So he's got a chain system in this thing. Because you need to be able to lower and raise your lights. Either that or you're going to need to lower or raise your plants. Stuff underneath them. So mine are just fluorescent lights. They hang on chains. I have a hook on. I have a light stand that a friend built for me out of wood. But I have a friend, she uses, when she runs out of room on her light stand, she has a ping pong table. And so we just have like those little hooks. You can buy that at the hardware store that screw in. They'll just have a little hook. You put your chain on there. And then there's always a place on the backs of the lights where you can connect to, often with another little hook. You connect these on here, and then you just move the chain. So I will, when the plants get taller, I'll have it moved up like this, so that it's a shorter bit of chain. So that'll move up the lights. When I need them longer, I can make them longer. It's real simple. And your lights in your fluorescent fixtures don't have to be anything fancy. There's lots of grow lights out there. They're lovely. Gardeners have a lot of fun experimenting with different kind of wavelengths of light and how they affect plant growth. But if you're just getting started and you're on a budget, just get some plain old fluorescent lights. That's what I have. I just use like some cool bulbs and some warm bulbs in my fixture, and not even that is needed. And so I'll have them in my light fixture. They're just plain old fluorescents. The LEDs, they use less energy than the fluorescents. So, but they put out a little more light, so you can have your lights farther away from your plants. When you use the fluorescent lights, you put them uncomfortably close to your plants. The first time I did it, I was like, I don't know. But you put the lights so they're only like an inch or 2 off of your plants, the actual bulbs themselves. They don't give out much heat, so they're not going to burn your plants. Unlike the old-fashioned regular lights, they put out a lot of heat. Fluorescents don't do that so much. So you put them close to your plants because they really need a lot of light to keep them stout. So when you're growing plants, you don't want tall, willowy plants. Like what you want are short, stout little plants that are going to put up with our Wyoming winds. So I always think I'm growing like sumo wrestlers of plants because I want them stout. Because when they go, you transplant them outside and they're in the wind, they will be whipping back and forth. And so you want it so that they'll be able to put up with that. And you can tell when they're not getting enough light. The way you can tell is that the area between where the leaves connect on a plant will start to get longer and longer and longer, and they'll lean. So if there's any source of light, they'll lean towards it. So if your plants are getting long and leggy and stretched out and they're leaning, you will know they're not getting enough light. So you need to do something about that.
How long do you leave the lights on during the
Oh, very good question. I'm glad you brought that up. So I am both forgetful and fairly lazy. So if I had to turn my lights on and off, the poor little things, they'd never get enough light. So what I use is a timer. You can buy a cheap one wherever you shop, hardware store, or if you have a Walmart or whatever. You can pick one up and you can use it to control the amount of light. So I set mine for 16 hours a day. So they say between 14 and probably 20 hours is fine. I find 16 has worked for all the different plants I've grown. And I grow everything from vegetables to native plants and everything in between. So that works really well. So all you do is you plug in your timer into your socket on the wall, and then you plug your lights into it. And it will turn them off and on like clockwork. It's great. So thank you for that question. What else? Do you have any other questions I should address at this point?
While you're doing that, I posted the link to the frost dates for Wyoming into the chat box. It's also, you can also find that document in the resources section on the where you joined today's class from the Grow a Little Extra webpage.
Great, thank you. So your little seeds are going to be sitting in there, and you keep your eye on them. And once most of them have germinated in a tray, I will take that little greenhouse top off of it, or if you use saran wrap or whatever you use, I will take it off. If it was saran wrap and it was tightly on there, I'd take it off earlier than I would the little greenhouse things. So you take that off and they'll keep growing, and you're watering them. You're making sure that they stay moist but not soggy. You will kill them off if there's too much water sitting in the bottom of your tray. They aren't aquatic plants. They don't like it. It'll drown their little roots. So you want to keep it damp but not soggy. So that's one of the keys of growing plants. So eventually they'll keep on growing, and this particular mix has some fertilizer in it. So look on your bag and see what's in there. The type of mix I use doesn't. So I will mix up some weak fertilizer, and I will fertilize them about once a week, or if I remember to do so. Sometimes I forget. So that helps give them some food, because there's not much food just within the regular plant mix unless they've already added some fertilizer. And if you're doing organic or something and want to use some kind of fish emulsion or seaweed, that's great. All you want to think about is you might want to get some that doesn't have much odor, since it's going to be in your house and you're going to smell it. So your plants will keep growing, and eventually you'll be moving up your lights as they get taller. And then eventually they'll get to the point where you're interested in transplanting them. So if you use these little cell packs, you might have a point where you need to transplant them into a larger container. And so like I said, I've used all sorts of things for transplanting. I have these little containers that I bought other plants in from the nursery, and then I cleaned them and made sure they didn't have any diseases. You can use 10% bleach solution. You can soak these in there and then rinse them off with water, and they'll be good to go. And then other things, I use plain old paper cups. You can just use a Phillips head screwdriver and poke some holes in there. Remember, they need drainage. And then I will transplant my plant out into this and grow it on in here until it goes into the garden. But these cell packs that Chris brought today are big enough that you can probably grow your transplant to the point that it's going to be put outside. So the next thing you want to think about is when to transplant. So if you're transplanting them onto a larger pot, you want to transplant them often when they're about 3 inches tall, or another way to tell is when they have at least one set of true leaves. So I don't know if you've ever seen a bean plant grow, but when it first grows, it puts out these little super fat leaves that come out. They're circular, they're roundish, and they're really fat because they got a lot of food stored in there to help the plant grow. And then as it continues to grow, new sets of leaves come out, and they look like what you would expect a bean leaf to look like. They're different. They're kind of pointier, they're flatter. And so when you have one set of those or two sets, you can go ahead and transplant. And so what you need to do, especially in Wyoming, is to harden your plants off. So this is a process of taking them from the lovely conditions we give them indoors and to when they can actually survive out in our wonderful climate. So they need a kind of transition period. You can do that multiple ways. How I do it is I put them on my driveway, which I think I mentioned before. I put them into basically the north side of my garage. So there's a reason for that. So basically I have the garage, it's on the north side, and then there's a nice lilac shrub that protects it from the wind. And what I will do is, so over a period of a week or two, I'll have them out there and I'll gradually expose them to more wind, to more sunlight, and our generally lovely conditions that we have. So I will start them off close to the garage where they're in the shade, because they're not used to it. Our sunlight is very strong, and so they're not used to it. And so then I'll gradually move them into the sunlight. I'll also gradually move them out into more wind, and a little bit, they'll be getting more cold. And if there's a frost snap coming along, I will shove them into the garage, shut the door, and they stay in there for the night until it's safe to come out. So that's how you kind of harden them off. You can do it another way, which is to put them in your garden and then put protection devices around them. And so a lot of people around here use things like wall waters for tomatoes. These are kind of plastic cheapy like things that have pockets of water all around them, and you fill them up with water. And then they sit there and the water collects heat in the day from the sun. And then at night it keeps it snug and warm so that it doesn't get frosted. So some of our warm season crops, which include tomatoes, most of the viney crops like cucumbers, squash, etc., they don't care for frost. They really don't like it at all. So you really have to protect them well. Other things like cold crops, they can take it a little colder. So the cold crops are things related to broccoli. There's broccoli, cauliflower, kohlrabi, there's a whole ton of them. And they can take the cold temperatures a lot better. And actually some of them you can actually plant outside before the last frost date because they can take the frost. This is another way to protect them. It's a row cover. This one's pretty thin. It'll also protect them from bugs. So if you're protecting them from frost, you might want one a little thicker than this one. But what you do is, if it's a floating one, you can kind of lay them on it. But otherwise you can use kind of rings made out of PVC or wire and lay this on top, and I'll create this nice little warm tunnel in there for them. Have any more questions?
Yeah, how long do you leave the dome greenhouse covers on your seedlings?
Basically, till most of them have germinated. So it depends how many. A lot of times I'm kind of nutty with native plants and flowers, so I'll have like 10 different varieties of stuff in one of these trays. And so I'll wait until the majority of them have come up. Vegetables, especially if you're planting one tray full of one kind of vegetable, they'll generally all come up at once. And so you just wait until they've all come up, like, they're about an inch tall or something, and I'll take it off. And sometimes I'll take it off for like half a day and then take it off fully later to kind of let them adjust to the lack of humidity that we have in our air. But it's not a big deal. And it's not real precise. That's what's great about starting plants from seed, is it's not that picky. If you give them certain things, they'll be happy. It's not like you have to be exact on everything. Any other questions?
One other question in the Q&A. It says, Donna asks, do you keep the lights on 16 hours of light per day until you transplant, or?
Yeah. I don't change it. It's not like I'm changing the light over the time. I just set them on the 16 hours and let them go until they're ready to go outside. So it seems they all seem to, I've grown, like I said, I've grown everything from tomatoes to picky native plants, and that same system works for them all. Any other questions?
Yes.
How are we doing on time?
There's one more.
Uh-oh.
Is there some vegetables that you should not start outside?
Or inside? Oh yeah. Well, you know, gardeners, we like to experiment with everything. So there's gonna be somebody who's tried everything. But things like carrots, I mean, they grow this root, you know, and they're sensitive to disturbance. If you try and grow them indoors and transplant them, you're most likely your root's gonna get all kind of goofy. So things like that. So oftentimes carrots, peas, you can start them indoors if you want, but they're so cold hardy that most people just stick them outside. I did this one little trick that I learned from a lady, which I find fun, is to take pea seeds and put them between damp layers of paper towel, and then put them in it like a bag or something, then put them on top of your refrigerator or wherever. And then you slightly germinate them. So the root will start coming out of the pea. And so after they've germinated, I think it took a week, if I remember correctly, then you go out and you plant them like that. You just have to be careful not to break the little roots off. And so you can plant them out there, and it gives you kind of more, you know what's going to come up. So there's less mystery on who's going to germinate and who's not. So that's a kind of fun thing to do. I enjoyed it anyways. So there's other things like beans. They don't care too much for transplanting. There's usually they say corn, but I know some people around our area they try them in the peat pots. They germinate them in the peat pots and then put the peat pots out because they're trying. Our season is so short. It's like the only way that they can get them so they might mature before it freezes in the fall. Good questions. Anything else?
Well, I don't see anything else in the chat or the Q&A. So Jenny, thank you so much for sharing that information with us and demonstrating and being here to share with us today.
You're very welcome.
I really appreciate that. And so while we're talking about growing food, next I want to talk a little bit about why we're donating and why we're growing a little bit extra, hopefully, in our garden. So hopefully today's session will inspire you to plant a little bit extra. And you've got all the skills and everything you need to grow a little extra. And then when it comes time to harvest, then we're going to donate a little extra. You know, Master Gardeners, as I mentioned, have donated almost 3,000 pounds of food in the last couple of years. Really, the food donation thing started as it came out of COVID, really, as a way we were thinking of ways that volunteers could participate from home, especially the early stages of COVID when people were less comfortable, you know, in public events and large gatherings and things like that. But Master Gardeners still wanted to remain active. So we thought, well, what if people were donating food from their gardens? And that really is something that is addressing a critical need in our state and in our community. So Kaylee is going to talk to us today a little bit about why we donate, how we donate, and if you're not familiar with the Sensible Nutrition Program, Kaylee, could you tell us a little bit about the Sensible Nutrition Program and how this all ties together with Master Gardeners and gardening and doing all the things that we're doing?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm going to just share some slides so it's not just me you're looking at as we're talking through, but if you have questions, feel free to drop them in either the chat or the Q&A box. All right, Chris, can you see the screen okay? Okay, awesome. Well, thank you, Jenny, so much for that overview on seeds. I'm super excited to get growing. That tip on making the soil damp before you use it is awesome because I exploded bags of soil all over my kitchen in 2020 when I did this. So thanks for that. All right. So I'm Kaylee. I'm from the Sensible Nutrition Program, and I just want to talk a little bit today about gardening and food security in the state. So if you've not heard of the Sensible Nutrition Program, we do two primary things in the state. We provide nutrition education to participants who income qualify. to help them make healthy food and beverage choices. We are a branch of SNAP Benefits, so we are the education arm of that program. In addition to education, we do community interventions that help make the healthy choice the easy choice for everyone. And so we do this in a few different ways, but 2 ways I wanted to talk about today are through local food and through food pantries. So the last 5-ish years, we've been working with community gardens and other local food projects to grow local food and get it into the hands of people who need it most. And one of the ways we do that is through the Healthy Food Pantry Project and this partnership with the Wyoming Hunger Initiative called Grow a Little Extra, which I'll talk about in just a few minutes. So part of the reason we do this is food insecurity is a issue in Wyoming and in the United States. The USDA defines food security insecurity in 2 ways. There's low food security, which means that there's reduced quality, variety, and desirability in the diet. So people may have access to food on a constant basis, but it may not be healthy food. People who experience very low food security have disrupted eating patterns and reduced food intake, meaning they don't have consistent access to food. CNP works with people in both of these, facing both of these situations, and working with food pantries to get fresh produce to people who need it is one of the ways we're working to solve that. And so in Wyoming, 11.7% of people are food insecure. That works out to about 1 in 9 people and 1 in 7 children facing hunger in the state. Our program, as I've said, we teach participants about food and nutrition, and we had this story from a participant in Campbell County this last year who, after taking our class, found ways to have healthier, cheaper meals and was actually able to start eating meals every day instead of just a couple times a week. So the things that we do make a huge difference, and thanks to Master Gardeners and Wyoming Extension, we have some means to solve these issues. So gardening, that's part of our solution. We get local food donations and we put it into the hands of those who need it most. And as we know, people who face food insecurity often have less access to fruits and vegetables. 80 to 90% of Americans also don't eat enough fruits and vegetables. So programs like these matter because they put fruits and vegetables within reach for those who need it, and they help increase those foods in the diet. Fruits and vegetables are key to being healthy. And so these solutions make a huge difference for people who need that assistance. And so in the past, we've done this in a couple of different ways. We've grown gardens at extension offices. This picture here is in Bighorn County. We've done community gardens. This one is at an apartment complex in Sweetwater County. And then we've been working with the Wyoming Hunger Initiative, which is Jenny Gordon's initiative. And she has a project called Grow a Little Extra, which reaches out to local gardeners to grow extra food that then gets donated to anti-hunger organizations like food pantries and soup kitchens. And so this program launched last year with CNP and UW Extension. And so we're really excited for a second year of that, and we would definitely like to have you on board for this project. So it's kind of a snapshot. CNP started local food work in 2017, and we donated just under 600 pounds of produce that year. And then each year it's increased. Grow a Little Extra contributed a huge amount of food last year, and we would like to see that continue to grow this year. And so there's some ways to do this. As master gardeners or garden volunteers in the state, you can work with youth and CNP to make this happen. Next week, we're going to talk about this a little bit more. But Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Boys and Girls Club, 4-H programs all have gardening efforts going on and often need people who have expertise in gardening to assist with these programs. We also have a lot of community gardens in the state, or gardens that were started by organizations. So maybe a food pantry does have a garden space, but needs someone to help run that space and take care of it. And then CNP and UW Extension also have gardening spaces going on. I mentioned the gardens at extension offices. We also have some geodomes there. Daycare centers often have gardens going that may need some help with those, and same with schools. So there's lots of opportunities to partner. CNP has educators in every county, and most of them do work on some sort of gardening project. So if you're interested, we definitely can connect you with your CNP educator to see what kind of programs are going on that you could be a part of. And we'll talk more about that in the next couple of weeks as well, and some of the opportunities that we have available. So with all of this, we really do invite you to join us in the fight against hunger in whatever way that looks like, and to help with donating produce to people who need it. Awesome. All right, Chris, anything I missed or any questions?
That is. Okay, is that? No, there it is again.
Nope.
There we go.
Okay, better.
I've got too many devices here working at the same time. But Kaylee, so I apologize for the echo. But anyway, thank you. That was a perfect overview, and exactly what I was hoping you would discuss today. Just to, I know a lot of folks here are master gardeners and are familiar with Extension and the Master Gardener program, but may not be familiar with all of our extension programs like the Sensible Nutrition program. And so while historically a lot of our partnerships have been with the ag educators in extension and our horticulturists, we're really excited about exploring opportunities for new partnerships with the Sensible Nutrition program. We're working on some of the same, towards the same goals. And so it just makes sense to work together to address some of these issues in our state. So it's a great partnership, and I look forward to it. And I hope some of you joining us today will consider participating in some of the volunteer opportunities that we will talk about throughout this course. I see a couple of, I see a couple of comments. Kaylee, do you want to talk about the connection with CNP?
Yeah, so CNP, we are an extension program. We're housed in extension offices all across the country, or across the state. Oh man. And so if you are donating produce and you're wondering where to donate it, reach out to your CNP educator. We are connected with all kinds of anti-hunger organizations in our communities. And we are there to help connect you to those programs and the people who need the food that you're looking to donate. So you can call your extension office locally to connect with us. And I'll also drop the link to our educator's contact from our website in the chat here so that you have access to that. Our educators love to partner. We have an amazing team across the state, and they would love to work with you and hear from you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kaylee. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I hope you can join us next week as well. Same time, same place. We'll be back next Monday at noon to talk about composting and improving the soil quality in your garden. We'll also have, and that'll be Caitlin Youngquist, Ag Extension Educator, talking about composting and improving your garden soil. And also Lori Dickinson with the Sensible Nutrition Program out of Sheridan County will be joining us as well. So we hope to share some good recipes and tips on how to grow and how to use the produce from your garden that you don't donate, because of course we all like to eat that fresh produce from our gardens as well. So you don't have to donate it all. Enjoy it as well, the fruits of your labor. And we hope to see you all again next week, and for the next few weeks, if you can join us, that would be great. With that, think spring. I see a lot of sunshine out there. Get your seeds started, and hopefully in 4 to 6 weeks, we are ready to plant them outdoors. Fingers crossed. All right, well, did you have anything else, Kaylee?
I was just going to say, next week, Lori will be talking about how to partner with youth programs in your community to involve them and grow a little extra and get gardens started with youth programs. So it should be a great session with lots of opportunities for volunteering and helping produce happen all over the area. Awesome.
Looking forward to that next week. And till then, everyone have a good week, and we'll see you then. Thank you.